There's a new mythical champion coming with the new area in Raid Shadow Legends, and I want to talk about it. Hello everybody, I'm Roadblock, and this is a Raid Shadow Legends video. I am very excited today because we do have another free mythical coming out that will be earned from the new area coming out in the game, the forest themed thing. I haven't actually had a chance yet to watch. In fact, why don't I do this? I think there's an official video out. I don't know if it's in the news here, but I've seen, yeah, it might be this one. So we won't do that in this video, but probably for my next video, I'll react to the Grim Forest because I haven't watched anything on it yet, but I have watched some stuff about the mythical, and I have different thoughts maybe on the mythical. So I apologize that this is how we're going to have to do it. We don't have the image of the champion on there, but this is how it was in the Discord. Because I don't know if they have different visuals in the content creator Discord. I'm not in that Discord. This is just a regular Discord for Raid Shadow Legends. They posted these, which, by the way, I put that in a recent survey or something like that. I was like, hey, can you put this stuff, like the fancy images that the content creators get to put up, can you put that stuff in the Discord too? And they're doing that, which is awesome for smaller creators like me. It's awesome for Discord clans to share this stuff and say, hey, check out this new champion, instead of having to get a screenshot from a YouTube channel. And maybe they've always done it. I just know that as a content creator, I have struggled to find the resources that I need, and I've had to go to other content creators and be like, yo, I need that image. Anyways, that's a little tangent that I went on, but I really do want to give my thoughts. I don't know, I've only watched one video on it, and they were kind of negative on the champion, which I can understand, but I'm also just want to share my thoughts and kind of, I don't know, let's just kind of see where we land. Listen up, I just got a new promo link that you can use to follow along with me on my latest free-to-play adventure and get a free Elenaril, as well as 3 more powerful epics as you level up. Here's how to do it. Log out of Play and Play and uninstall. Click the link in the description and register with a brand new email. Launch Raid and complete the tutorial. Go to your inbox and claim your first champ. Don't miss out on your chance to get Elenaril right after signing up, as well as Fayne, Uugo, and Tagoar as you progress through Raid. Click on my link right now and let's crush this together. Okay, so the base form is a defense-based form. And I think that is important to know. The alternate form, which I can download very quickly here, the alternate form is HP based, and that's the damage dealing form. And we'll get to that form in a second, but those are very important things to note. That frustrates me a little bit. It's hard to, I mean, okay, I get that you're probably not building for damage in this mode, but frustrates me that when they, have defense based and then HP based, because it's harder to build that champion. You can't just stack all of HP or all of defense. You maybe want to do a mix of it. I suspect you're probably just going to do all of HP, and we'll talk about that here. So let's jump into the kit. So for the A1, attacks one enemy, heals all allies by 5% of their max HP, heals all allies by an additional 5% of their max HP if this champion attacks a target under a leech debuff. I want to be clear, this is not a good A1. The problem is that you're healing allies by their HP. That is not going to necessarily be a good, because those champions may be low HP champions. They could also be high HP champions, but 5% of their HP. Sure, you can amplify the healing abilities of it and stuff, but in reality, this isn't what you want. If you're looking for a healing ability that's going to keep your champions alive, this isn't necessarily what you would want. So I want to be clear about that. It's better if it says this champion's max HP, and that's where you're going to find those really, really good healers. They tend to have that type of wording around their healing ability. In fact, what was it? Now, it's not always the case, but it is common one. I'm just curious about Donatello. Yeah, so here we have heals all enemies by 5% of this champion's max HP. So this is a legendary, yes, a fusion some people don't say free for a fusion, but you know, if you were able to do the fusion, this is a fusion, and it heals all allies by 5% of this champion's max HP. And then we go to this mythical champion, and it's the same thing, but their HP. What I would have preferred, what I think is a way better version of this kit, heals all allies by 5% of their max HP, heals all allies by 5% of this champion's max HP if they attack a target under a leech. I think that would make some sense, right? Because Donatello's A1 is incredibly good. This A1 is not as good as Donatello's, and it's a mythical champion. All of that aside, I also kind of want to be clear that raw, like, healing champions aren't quite as used. Like, you're never looking for a champion just to put out big heals. They need to bring other stuff to the battle. So, like, I just personally feel like big heals has kind of just gone away, and you're more looking for shields, leech, which again, by the way, I'm not saying this to say this champion's bad. I'm just taking a tangent on healing itself. Although in Chimera, healing can be really, really handy. But for a long time there, before I got Senna and Androck, I was running leech as my only healing in Chimera. So the fact that this whole kit is built around leech makes a lot of sense. I'm okay with the kit overall, but I did want to point out that just like really big healing, it has its place in certain longer fights, Chimera and Hydra, but you could usually get away with, you know, a couple continuous heals, leech in some cases, like I just said for Chimera. So just something to keep in mind in general. At least that's my experience. I could be completely wrong. You can absolutely disagree with me, but that's been my experience so far. Okay, let's move on to the A2. Attacks all enemies, heal all allies by 15% of this champion's max HP, already better. The value of the heal increases by 5% each leech debuff on the enemy team. I just want to be clear that 15% of this champion's max HP is already a great heal. And then you're adding in that 5% for each leech debuff on the enemy team. That's a good heal. This right here is a very good heal. It's on a 3-turn cooldown. Doesn't need books to reduce that. And the one book increases the healing, but so far, I don't think you really need books on the A1 at all. I'm sorry, not the A1. On the base form at all. But we're not done. If a champion receives any surplus heal, places a shield buff on that champion for 2 turns. The value of the shield is equal to the amount of surplus heal received up to 30% of the champion's max HP. That is actually really good. Now, I kind of wish this wasn't capped, and just the reason that I say that is obviously it could. I wish the cap was the existing shield cap. I'll put it that way. I wish the cap was the existing shield cap and not the 30% of the champion's max HP, which I suppose with really, you know, in some cases, really large HP champions, that will probably hit the shield cap, to be honest, because I mean, I guess you'd have to have somebody with what, 100,000? 30% of that would be 30,000. Isn't that the shield cap? I don't know. No. The shield cap's like 2 million. What am I saying? Yeah, I don't know. I just look. Would that be overpowered? Probably, right? We don't really want any more champions that can just go crazy with shields. We've got Titus. Well, I don't have him, but you know, a lot of you have him. You did if you did the fusion. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like 30% of the champion's max HP is gonna vary a ton based on the different champions. Like, I'm just imagining like a really squishy damage dealer getting a 30% HP shield, and it's, you know, a couple of thousand shield. It's like, that's not really gonna keep them alive the way that we want. So I don't know, but I find that to be a very unique part of the kit. The surplus heal turning into shield, I like that. I think that's really cool. It's pleasant surprise because overhealing is gonna happen a lot, right? I just talked about how healing in general isn't brought to the table that much because it's pretty easy to keep your champions alive with heals and big shields. Well, now we have big shield. So it's a very interesting start so far. For the A, 3 attacks all enemies, places a leech debuff for 2 turns and a provoke debuff for 1 turn on all enemies. Also places a counterattack buff on this champion for 2 turns. AoE hit with an AoE leech, that makes sense. That increases the value of this heal. Provoke on all enemy for 1 turn on a 3-turn cooldown. Okay, but it gets better, so I'm not going to knock them that much for that. Really, the best provokers in the game, like, even if you just did something, look, I don't know what they're afraid of with provoke, right? If they're afraid that a 2-turn provoker is going to completely destroy the arena meta, I get it. That would be frustrating to deal with. The problem that I have is just throw in, if the target is a boss, the provoke is 2 turns. Because 2-turn provoke is what you really want. 2-turn provoke on a 3-turn cooldown, let me be clear. That's really what you want out of your provoker. Obviously, those of you that have really deep accounts and have built up your speed and go crazy fast, obviously you're going to have a far easier time keeping this provoke debuff up. But for mid-ranged, kind of lower level endgame players, keeping that provoke up is difficult. It's incredibly difficult on my free-to-play, and until I got Archer Queen, it was difficult for me to do on my main account. So, just a thought there. And again, this is a mythical champion. That's the part where it's like, is this leech and provoke better than other provokers in Raid Shadow Legends? No, there are quite a few better legendary provokers than this champion. Now the passive, each time this champion hits an enemy under a leech debuff, increases this champion's defense and HP by 5%, stacking up to 50%. So that's obviously really good because the shield is based, or the healing is based on this champion's max HP. You're increasing your max HP, therefore increasing the shield that you deal out. The defense is nice because it's going to reduce the damage you take, but also this champion's damage is based on defense, so that may have some value there. But when attacked by enemies whose attack is higher than or equal to their defense, it will place a 50% decrease attack debuff. If the defense is higher than the attack, it places a 60% decreased defense debuff. This is terrible. I hate this ability a lot. And I get that it's a passive and it's really good, but I just don't see the value because now you have to bring more. So let's think of Hydra, for instance. You will always get that decreased attack, sure. But now I have to bring another decreased defense champ in order to make up for that. I would rather have a champion that can do more for your team. If this is the champion that you pull it's a free champion that you can get and you want them to be your support, make them a support. I just can't think, we're talking about my free-to-play right now, which has 0 good supports. I don't see a world in which I use this champion in Hydra. And I understand that not every champion needs to be used in Hydra, but that's where I'm using support. Obviously, there are supports that get used in PvP. This doesn't touch them. We don't have a cleanse. We don't have turn meter boost. We don't have any of the things that you would want out of a PvP support. This is by all the evidence on the screen, this is a PvE support, and it's not as good as other supports, and it's a mythical champion. So it frustrates me. This support kit frustrates me quite a bit. And I just want to check and make sure, do they call it a support base? It just says mythical defense. I think it's cut off whether or not it's defined as a support. Or maybe they just call it a defense champion, be it too. So, okay, Lastly, when attacked by enemies under a leech debuff, has a 50% chance to place a provoke debuff for 1 turn. Now, I like that, but the big problem that you always run into with this type of provoke is that in Hydra, the Hydra head that you want to provoke doesn't always target the champion that is provoking it. This is why Wixwell doesn't always counterattack them, and you have to reapply that A1 provoke if you're using him as your provoker, which I am on my free-to-play, and I'm frustrated. You lose track, and that provoke goes away. Their whole enemy Hydra force gets cleansed, and you start over from scratch. It just I just don't see the support kit that's clearly in front of me as anything that I would want to use in Raid Shadow Legends, in the current iteration of Raid Shadow Legends. Maybe a brand new account would be able to carry and big heals and get leech and get really, really good clan boss damage. By the way, I do think that this would be a very, very good champion for clan boss. I want to be clear about that. I don't want to undermine it too much and say that this is the worst mythical ever. No, as a progression mythical, this is pretty good. And while the new content, I believe, according to the video that I watched, it may not be for end-to-end game players, I just feel like clan boss these days, there are a lot of solutions, there are a lot of options that you use to get a reasonable team going, that by the time you do get this champion, just don't know for sure that it's going to be the big clan boss answer that you're going to be wanting. You'll probably have a better answer before this one really becomes necessary. So again, just how I feel, but this part of the kit I do not like. Then we move on to the second form. It helps if I open up the alternate form stats. So here we have the alternate form. A1 attacks 1 enemy, places a block buffs debuff for 2 turns. This debuff cannot be resisted if the target's HP is lower than this champion's. I'm going to point out one part of the kit very quickly. Every third skill this champion uses will attack all enemies instead. So keep that in mind when you see all this attack 1 enemy stuff. It's an A1 with block buffs, so it's not the worst thing in the world, but it's a single target A1. Not that big of a fan. Attacks 1 enemy, will ignore Stone Skin. The damage inflicted by this skill increases by 50% if the target's HP is lower than this champion's. That's actually pretty good. Resets the cooldown of this skill if the target is killed. I like this ability. Ignoring Stone Skin is always welcome. And while we don't know the multipliers, if we look at Empress and we look at Carnage, both of them have been viable. Now, obviously, Polera is not very good, but I'm holding out hope this will do good. I'm wishful thinking maybe, but I am holding out hope that this will be a reasonably good damage dealing ability. For the A3, attacks 1 enemy before attacking, places a 30% increased crit damage buff on all allies for 2 turns, steals 50% of the target's turn meter, steals 100% turn meter instead if the target's HP is lower than this champion's, destroys the HP by 25% or 50% if their HP is lower than this champion's. So this is a high risk extra turn ability. So you can steal 100% of the turn meter if their HP is lower than this champion. So theoretically, if they have a ton of turn meter, you can yank their turn meter and go again, and then do a bunch of Stone Skin ignoring damage. It's high risk because they can resist that, and that can really, really frustrating. But you'd want to do it because you want that increased crit damage. So it's risk reward type of thing. Obviously, champions that you can't take their turn meter or bosses that you can't take their turn meter, not very good. So this part of the kit feels very, very much an arena based kit because you've got turn meter stealing that you can't do, ignoring Stone Skin, that's mostly an arena. So those parts kind of make sense. And that block buffs being single target, I just don't know why they have the block buffs. It's a great debuff, I get it. I just don't kind of see how it plays into the whole kit, I guess. Okay, then we have the passive. Will ignore 15% of a target's defense if the HP is lower than this champion's. Will ignore 15% of the target's defense if they're under a leech. And this is one of the biggest frustrating issues I have with the way that Plarium builds their mythicals. You are having a passive in the alternate form that reacts with an ability in the base form. Can't use them both. Like, it just doesn't work that way. Yeah, you're very rarely are damage dealers. Yes, you're going to transform most champions and get value out of the skill sets that they have on both sides. But if you want a support, you bring a support. If you want damage dealer, you bring a damage dealer. And for mythicals, you're usually using them in either or form. Very rarely am I trying to set up my next turn with a current turn, like, you know what I mean? Like, imagine trying to bring a champion that decreases defense and places weaken, and then you have to wait a whole series of turns before they then do a nuke. It's like, oh no, I'll just bring Lydia, right? And that's kind of how I feel about this. Oh, you can ignore a ton of damage if you bring a leech. This guy has a leech, but you're not going to get to use it because you're going to have to place your leech and then wait for everybody in the game, in the round, to take a turn before you get to go again. And then you can transform if you haven't been stunned, if you haven't been polymorphed, if you haven't been killed, right? And so that frustrates the heck out of me, but you know, it is what it is. Every third skill this champion uses will attack all enemies instead. We already talked about that. I think that's really cool. I like this concept of a champion that ramps up over time. It's really, really frustrating to deal with these, like, you know, we've all been there. If you're in the mid game or the early late game, like, you get it. You've lost that speed battle. So you go in a fight, you get into it, you lose the speed battle, and then their speed booster goes, their decreased defense and weakened champion goes, and then their nuker goes, and you go, right? So I do like the idea of champions that ramp up rather than these, like, just instantly one-shot your whole team champions. The problem is that the meta doesn't support it. I want these type of champions to be good. I want to have a back and forth and a little bit more strategy to my arena gameplay, but this is just too slow, right? You've got 3 turns. You've got 3 turns before you get the big AoE hit, and that is third skill this champion uses. But there's a catch. There is a catch. This champion joins every third attacking skill used by allies. This champion will use their default skill. But I assume, a big assumption here, but I assume that if they're using their A1, that's a skill that they used, even if it isn't part of an ally attack. So then they get to potentially proc that AoE hit on one of those A1s or build it up. So then you have this be an AoE or this be an AoE. Now, if the multipliers are great and this does just insane damage, absolutely amazing kit. Despite all of my little, like, nuances and disappointments in it, if it hits hard, it's a good kit. Because if Soul Separator hits hard, and not only do you steal all their return meter, but you also one-shot somebody while giving yourself increased crit damage, and then you can one-shot somebody else through their stone skin, that's good, right? But if this hits like a wet noodle, and sure, you got some turn meter, and this hits like a wet noodle, and even though you go through stone skin, they don't die. You know, we've seen that from other champions that just, they hit hard, they ignore stone skin, but they don't hit hard. Yeah, it can be very frustrating to deal with. So, but this is getting to the point where it's far too long of a video, so we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. I just want to say thank you guys for watching with me. I gave a really detailed breakdown, and I like to do that. These are fun for me, and time got away from me, which, you know, that's how you can tell I'm having fun. Either way, thank you so much for watching. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. It is the best way to support my channel, and I look forward to seeing all of you in the next video. Take care.